You wake to the sound of your own breath, shallow, uneven, as if someone else is borrowing your lungs. The room is familiar. The same cracked ceiling, the same faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs, the same shadow of the oak tree clawing at the window. But something is wrong. The walls feel closer, the air thicker, as though the space itself has conspired to trap you. You try to move, but your limbs respond sluggishly, as if your body has been hijacked by an unseen force. This is not sleep paralysis. This is your mind rebelling. Imagine, for a moment, that the very instrument you rely on to navigate life, your consciousness, your reasoning, yourself, has turned traitor. It whispers lies you know are false, yet feel irrefutably true. You are insignificant. Your efforts are futile. The world is a cage, and you built the bars. You argue with yourself, but the voice is relentless, twisting logic into a noose. How can something so intrinsic to your survival become your executioner? Here is the paradox. The human mind, celebrated as the apex of evolution, the tool that split atoms and painted the Sistine Chapel, is also a master of self-sabotage. It conjures phantoms from nothing, spins narratives that poison reality, and imprisons you in loops of dread or doubt. You are both the prisoner and the jailer, the architect and the disaster. Why? What ancient flaw in our design allows the mind to devour its host? Consider the soldier who survives war only to fight invisible enemies in his sleep. The artist who creates beauty yet sees only flaws. The lover who craves connection but sabotages intimacy. These are not quirks of personality. They are symptoms of a deeper fracture. The mind, in its quest to protect, often becomes the threat. It hoards pain to shield you from greater pain. It invents stories to fill the void left by unanswered questions. But when does protection become persecution? When does the sentinel become the invader? You might say, this is just anxiety. This is depression. But labels are cages too. They simplify the chaos into tidy boxes, yet the chaos remains. What if the problem is not a chemical imbalance or a traumatic memory, but something far more insidious? What if the mind's rebellion is not a malfunction but a feature, a shadow cast by the very light of human consciousness? Think of the labyrinth. The ancient Greeks built it to imprison the Minotaur, a monster born of divine punishment. But the labyrinth also served another purpose. It hid the horror from the outside world. Your mind is both the labyrinth and the Minotaur. It guards you from truths too terrible to face while feeding on the fear of those truths. Every thought, every emotion, is a thread meant to guide you out, or a snare meant to keep you trapped. Which is it? The question gnaws deeper. If the mind is the enemy, who is left to fight it? The watcher behind your eyes, the you that observes your thoughts. Is that a soul? A ghost in the machine? Or just another illusion spun by the mind to preserve its dominion? You cannot outrun this. You cannot drug it away. Meditation, therapy, mantras, they are bandages on a wound that refuses to clot. Yet here is the cruelest twist. The mind's rebellion is not random. It follows a logic as precise as a mathematical proof. It calculates, it strategizes, it wants. But what does it want? To keep you safe? To punish you? To remind you that free will is a myth. You stand at the edge of a precipice, staring into the abyss of your own psyche. The next step is not a leap into darkness, but a plunge into the light, a light that may scorch away the shadows or blind you forever. Do not look away. The answer lies not in solving the mind, but in questioning the question itself. What if the rebellion is not a flaw, but a calling? A demand to evolve beyond the prison of thought, to become something stranger and more resilient than the mind can comprehend? The trap is also the key. The enemy is also the guide. But how? That is the question that will haunt you until the next dawn. You are not the first to stand at this precipice. For millennia, humanity's greatest minds have stared into the abyss of the self and wondered, why does the mind betray its maker? The answer lies not in the brain's wiring, but in the paradox of consciousness itself. To be aware is to be split, observer and observed, thinker and thought. This duality, this cleavage, is the birthplace of suffering. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the hidden realm of denied desires and fears that sabotages the persona we present to the world. But the shadow is not the enemy. It is the part of you that refuses to be ignored. Consider Nietzsche's warning. He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster. The mind, in its relentless quest to categorize and control, becomes the monster it seeks to defeat. It weaponizes logic to justify fear, twists reason into rationalization, and builds cathedrals of belief on foundations of sand. Schopenhauer saw this clearly. The human will, he argued, is a blind, insatiable force that dooms us to perpetual craving. Even when you achieve what you desire, the mind invents new lacks, new hungers. It is a serpent eating its own tail. But why? The answer coils deeper into the marrow of evolution. The mind evolved to prioritize survival, not happiness. Anxiety is not a flaw, it is an ancient algorithm, sharpened by millennia of threats. Your brain's primary directive is not to make you content, but to keep you alive. Gabor Mate calls this the trauma of unsafety, a legacy of ancestors who survived by staying vigilant. But in a world without saber-toothed tigers, the mind manufactures phantom dangers, social rejection, existential insignificance, the terror of unmet potential. It is a smoke detector screaming in an empty house. Yet the problem is not just biological, it is existential. Jean-Paul Sartre wrote that humans are condemned to be free, burdened by the weight of infinite choices. The mind, overwhelmed by this freedom, clings to illusions of control. It builds narratives to explain the random, assigns meaning to chaos, and punishes you when the stories collapse. Viktor Frankl, who survived Nazi death camps, saw this in extremis. Those who lost their why succumbed to despair. But even meaning is a trap. To ask, "What is my purpose?" is to surrender authority to an abstract concept. The mind becomes a tyrant, demanding answers it cannot provide. Krishnamurti pierced this illusion. The thinker is the thought, he said. There is no you separate from the mind's machinations. The rebellion is not a battle between self and psyche, but a civil war within the self. The mind fragments into factions, the critic, the pleaser, the escapist, each vying for dominance. Aldous Huxley warned of this in Brave New World. We pacify ourselves with distractions, numbing the dissonance. But the war continues beneath the surface, poisoning relationships, ambitions, even joy. Zygmunt Bauman called modernity a liquid existence, where identity is fluid, unstable. The mind, desperate for solidity, clings to labels, jobs, ideologies, relationships as life rafts. But labels are cages. To define yourself as a success is to fear becoming a failure. To see yourself as kind is to dread being exposed as cruel. The mind's need for coherence becomes a prison. Camus, the absurdist, laughed at this paradox. The more you seek meaning, the more absurd life becomes. Yet he urged rebellion, not against the world, but against the mind's demand for answers. Here is the hidden root. The mind conflates thinking with being. It mistakes the map for the territory, the story for the self. When you say I am anxious, you fuse identity with a transient emotion. When you say I am broken, you cement a momentary state into eternal truth. This is the trap. The mind, in its hunger to make sense of chaos, reduces the vastness of existence to a prison of language and labels. But there is a way out. Nietzsche's will to power is not domination over others, but mastery over the mind's illusions. To rebel is to recognize that you are not your thoughts. You are the space in which thoughts arise. This is the radical insight of Eastern philosophies and modern mindfulness. The mind is a tool, not a tyrant. Yet knowing this intellectually is useless. The breakthrough lies in experiencing the gap between the thinker and the thought, the observer and the observed. But how do you escape the labyrinth when the labyrinth is your own mind? The answer begins with a question. What if the rebellion is not a flaw, but a summons, a demand to transcend the mind's narrow logic and embrace the raw, unfiltered truth of existence. The next step is the hardest. You must stop fighting the mind and start dismantling its illusions. But first, you must confront the darkest truth of all. The mind's rebellion is not an accident. It is a mirror. And what it reflects is the self you have been avoiding all along. The rebellion is not the problem. It is the solution trying to get your attention. The mirror held up by the mind's rebellion does not merely reflect, it distorts. It magnifies your flaws, minimizes your strengths, and warps reality into a grotesque caricature of itself. And yet, you trust it. You have no choice. To question the reflection is to question the existence of the mirror. But what if the distortion is deliberate? What if the mind's sabotage is not random but strategic, designed to keep you trapped in patterns that feel inescapable? Consider the cognitive biases that govern your every decision. The confirmation bias whispers, "Seek only what confirms your beliefs." The negativity bias screams, "Focus on what can harm you." These are not glitches. They are survival mechanisms gone rogue. Evolution equipped the mind to prioritize immediate threats over long-term growth. In a world of saber-toothed tigers, this made sense. In a world of Instagram likes and existential dread, it chains you to cycles of self-doubt and dissatisfaction. Every thought becomes a brick in the wall of your own confinement. But the consequences ripple far beyond the individual. Society itself is shaped by the mind's hidden rebellion. Zygmunt Bauman's liquid modernity is not just a personal crisis, it is a collective one. The same fragmented identities that haunt you infect culture, politics, and relationships. Social media amplifies the mind's distortions, turning comparison into competition and connection into performance. You curate your life to match an idealized narrative, but the gap between the story and the self grows wider with every post. The result? A society of lonely individuals, united only by their shared isolation. Think of the cultural conditioning that begins before you can speak. From childhood, you are taught to equate worth with achievement, love with approval, happiness with consumption. These scripts are written into the neural pathways of your brain, shaping how you perceive yourself and the world. Gabor Mate calls this the hidden curriculum of modern life, a silent indoctrination into a system that values productivity over presence, image over authenticity. The mind internalizes these lessons, repeating them like mantras until they become indistinguishable from truth. And yet, the most insidious consequence is the one you cannot see, the erosion of agency. The mind's rebellion convinces you that you are powerless, that your thoughts, emotions, and actions are determined by forces beyond your control. Neuroscience tells you that free will is an illusion. Psychology tells you that trauma dictates your behavior. Philosophy tells you that meaning is a construct. Each of these truths is a thread pulling at the fabric of your autonomy. You begin to believe that you are not the author of your life, but a character in a story written by biology, society, or fate. This is the ultimate betrayal. The mind robs you of responsibility. Responsibility, not as a burden, but as a birthright. Viktor Frankl argued that even in the worst circumstances, humans retain the freedom to choose their attitude. But the mind rejects this freedom, clinging instead to victimhood or blame. It whispers, "You are a product of your genes, your upbringing, your environment." And you listen, because it is easier to be a victim than to take ownership of your choices. The cost of this surrender is staggering. Relationships crumble under the weight of unexamined fears. Ambitions falter because the mind insists they are impossible. Joy becomes elusive, chased endlessly but never caught. The unseen trap tightens its grip, and you mistake its pressure for safety. But here is the paradox. The mind's rebellion is not just destructive, it is creative. It forces you to confront the limits of your identity, the fragility of your beliefs, the chaos of existence. Arthur Schopenhauer saw suffering as the essence of life, but also its greatest teacher. The pain of the mind's betrayal is a crucible, forging resilience and insight. The question is whether you will let it break you or remake you. The answer lies in recognizing the mind's illusions for what they are, not truths, but tools. Cognitive biases are not enemies but shortcuts, useful in moderation but dangerous when unchecked. Cultural conditioning is not destiny but dialogue, a script you can rewrite with awareness. Even the erosion of agency is reversible, if you reclaim responsibility not as a burden but as a gift. But how do you dismantle the wall when you are trapped inside it? The key is in the cracks, the moments when the mind's logic falters, when the illusion slips and reveals the raw, unfiltered truth beneath. These moments are rare and fleeting, but they hold the power to transform everything. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff, the wind whipping through your hair, the ground trembling beneath your feet. The mind screams, "Turn back." But something deeper urges you forward. This is the rebellion within the rebellion, the call to transcend the mind's tyranny and step into the unknown. The next realization will shatter everything you thought you knew. It will demand courage, humility, and a willingness to let go of the very thing you have been fighting to preserve. Are you ready? The cliff does not care whether you leap or retreat. It simply exists, indifferent and vast, a mirror of the void within you. To break free of the mind's rebellion is not to conquer it, but to step outside its dominion altogether. This is not an act of war, but of surrender, a paradoxical rebellion against the need to rebel. You must unmake the prison brick by brick, starting with the most dangerous illusion of all, the belief that you are your thoughts. Imagine for a moment that your mind is a stormy sea. The waves crash and churn, each one a thought demanding attention, each ripple an emotion pulling you under. For years, you have fought these currents, trying to swim against them, only to be exhausted and overwhelmed. But what if the solution is not to fight the waves, but to become the ocean itself? To see the mind not as a battleground, but as a boundless expanse where thoughts arise and dissolve like foam on the surface. This is the first step in breaking free. Recognizing that you are not the storm, you are the stillness beneath it. This insight is not new. Ancient traditions from Buddhism to Stoicism have long taught that liberation lies in detachment. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Yet modern life conspires to keep you entangled. Distractions flood your senses, demands fracture your focus, and the mind clings to its illusions as if they were lifelines. To detach is not to withdraw, but to engage differently, to observe without judgment, to feel without identification. This is mindfulness, but not as a practice, as a way of being. But how do you begin? Start small. When the mind whispers its familiar lies, "You are not enough, you will fail, the world is against you," do not argue, do not resist. Instead ask, "Who is listening?" The question creates distance, a sliver of space between you and the thought. In that space lies freedom. Viktor Frankl called this the last human freedom, the ability to choose your response to any situation. But choice is meaningless without awareness. Awareness is the light that exposes the shadows, the sword that cuts through the tangled web of the mind. To cultivate awareness, you must confront the mind's rebellion head-on. This means sitting with discomfort, leaning into fear and embracing uncertainty. It means dismantling the stories you tell yourself, the narratives of inadequacy, victimhood, or entitlement, and replacing them with questions. Who am I without these stories? What remains when the ego dissolves? These questions are not rhetorical, they are existential. They demand action, not answers. Consider the example of those who have walked this path before you. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison, yet he emerged not broken but transformed. His mind could have consumed him with bitterness, yet he chose forgiveness. Similarly, Mahatma Gandhi faced violence with non-violence, turning the mind's instinct for retaliation into a force for peace. These were not superhuman feats. They were acts of radical self-mastery. They understood that the mind's rebellion is not an obstacle, but an opportunity. Gabor Mate speaks of healing as integration, the process of reclaiming the fragmented parts of the self. The critic, the pleaser, the escapist, they are not enemies, but lost children, crying out for love and attention. To integrate them is to listen without judgment, to hold them with compassion, and to guide them back to wholeness. This is not easy. It requires vulnerability, the courage to face what you have spent a lifetime avoiding. But the reward is profound, a sense of unity, of coherence that transcends the chaos of the mind. Yet even integration is not the final step. The ultimate rebellion is to transcend the mind entirely, to realize that you are not the thinker, but the awareness behind the thought. This is the insight of Jiddu Krishnamurti. The mind cannot solve the problems of the mind. Only silence can. Silence is not the absence of thought, but the presence of something greater, the infinite, the eternal, the unnameable. It is the space in which the mind dissolves, leaving only pure being. To access this space, you must let go of everything you believe defines you, your roles, your achievements, your identity. This is terrifying, for the mind equates letting go with annihilation. But annihilation is not death, it is rebirth. In the words of Nietzsche, "And when you look long into an abyss, the abyss also looks into you." The abyss is not the enemy. It is the gateway to transformation. Breaking free is not a one-time event, but a continuous process. Each day you must choose awareness over autopilot, presence over distraction, authenticity over performance. It is a rebellion that never ends, for the mind will always seek to reassert its control. But with each act of defiance, you reclaim a piece of yourself. You become not the prisoner or the jailer, but the architect of a new reality. The final realization awaits, beyond the edge of understanding. It will not come as an answer, but as an experience, a moment of clarity so profound, it will redefine everything you thought you knew. Are you ready to meet it? You have reached the edge of the map, where the ink blurs into the unknown and the compass spins wildly. Here, in this uncharted territory, lies the ultimate truth. The realization that redefines not only who you are, but what reality itself is. It is not an answer to be grasped, but a threshold to be crossed. To step through it is to leave behind the illusion of separation and awaken to the indivisible whole. Imagine standing on a mountaintop at dawn, the horizon bleeding light into the sky. For years, you believed the world was something outside of you, a vast, indifferent expanse to conquer or endure. But now, as the first rays of sunlight pierce the darkness, you feel it, the boundary between self and other dissolving like mist. You are not separate from the mountain beneath your feet, the air filling your lungs, the stars fading into daybreak. You are the universe experiencing itself. This is the final paradox. The mind's rebellion was never about betrayal, it was about reunion. Every thought, every emotion, every moment of suffering was a call to remember what you had forgotten. The mind fractured your awareness to protect you from the overwhelming truth of unity. It built walls to shield you from infinity. But now those walls crumble, and you see clearly for the first time. There is no you apart from existence itself. The implications are staggering. If you are not separate, then neither is anyone else. The stranger on the street, the bird in the sky, the tree swaying in the wind, they are all expressions of the same infinite consciousness. Suffering arises not from the nature of reality, but from the illusion of division. Wars are fought, relationships falter, and hearts break because the mind insists on boundaries that do not exist. To break free of the mind's tyranny is to dissolve these boundaries, to realize that love is not something you give or receive. It is the essence of being. But this realization is not sentimental. It is ruthless in its clarity. It demands that you abandon the ego, not as an enemy, but as a construct that has served its purpose. The ego is the lens through which the mind perceives the world, but it is also the filter that distorts reality. To let go of the ego is to see without distortion, to hear without interpretation, to exist without definition. This is the insight of Eckhart Tolle. Enlightenment is not becoming something new, but awakening to what already is. Yet here is the most unsettling truth. Awakening does not grant immunity from pain. The mind's rebellion will continue, for it is woven into the fabric of human existence. The difference is that you no longer identify with it. Thoughts arise, emotions surge, stories unfold, but they pass like clouds across the sky, leaving the infinite blue untouched. You become both participant and witness, actor and observer, creator and creation. This duality is the final paradox. To transcend the mind is to embrace its limits. To awaken is to remain fully human. The Zen masters understood this. Enlightenment is not escape, but engagement. It is chopping wood and carrying water, loving deeply and grieving fully, living with eyes wide open to the beauty and brutality of existence. There is no utopia beyond the veil, only a deeper intimacy with life as it is. And so, the rebellion comes full circle. The mind's sabotage was never meant to destroy you, but to liberate you. Its relentless questioning, its ceaseless craving, its endless search for meaning, all were pointing you toward the one truth that cannot be spoken. You are already whole, always have been, always will be. As you stand on the mountaintop, the wind carries whispers of ancient wisdom. Know thyself, said the oracle at Delphi. That thou art, declared the Upanishads. Be here now, urged Ram Dass. These teachings converge in a single revelation. The journey inward is the journey outward. To know yourself is to know the cosmos. To heal yourself is to heal the world. But this knowing is not intellectual. It is visceral. It is the shiver down your spine when you gaze at the stars, the ache in your chest when you hold someone you love, the quiet certainty that beneath the chaos lies an order too vast to comprehend. This is the ultimate truth. Existence is not a puzzle to solve, but a mystery to embrace. The rebellion ends not with triumph, but with surrender. You stop fighting the mind and start dancing with it. You stop seeking answers and start living questions. You stop trying to control life and start flowing with it. In this surrender, you find freedom, not from the mind, but within it. And so, the story concludes where it began, with you, awake, alive, and aware. The labyrinth still stands, but you are no longer lost within it. You see now that the Minotaur was never the monster, it was the guide. The walls were never the prison, they were the path. And the journey? It was never about arriving. It was about becoming. As the sun rises higher, casting its golden light over the world, you take a breath. The air feels different now, charged with possibility. You smile, not because everything makes sense, but because it doesn't. And somehow, that is enough.